What's up, guys, and welcome back to my channel. There was one MMA facility that was completely off limits for Khabib and his close teammates during his fighting career. Despite becoming one of the most dominant champions the UFC has ever seen, Khabib's training locations were carefully chosen, and one gym in particular was viewed as a strict no-go. Khabib rose to the top of the UFC with an undefeated record and retired at 29-0, leaving without a single blemish on his professional resume. That level of success was built on elite preparation, discipline, and guidance. Most importantly, from his late father and coach, Abdulmanap. Alongside his father, Khabib also worked closely with Javier Mendez at American Kickboxing Academy in San Jose, California, where he trained with top fighters like Daniel Cormier, Cain Velasquez, and Luke Rockhold. Although Khabib became one of the most famous fighters associated with AKA, he and his inner circle were quietly discouraged from training at an affiliate gym overseas. In 2014, AKA expanded internationally with the opening of AKA Thailand, a facility founded and still owned by former UFC and WE's title challenger Mike Swick. Over the years, many high-level fighters have trained there, but Khabib and his longtime teammate Islam Makhachev were notably absent. Speaking in a recent interview, Swick explained that the decision was largely influenced by Abdulmanap. According to him, Khabib's father was never comfortable with the idea of his fighters traveling to Thailand, viewing it as a potential distraction during crucial stages of their careers. The concern was not about the quality of training, but about the environment and lifestyle surrounding the location. Swick noted that while many Dagestani fighters have trained at AKA Thailand, Khabib's family preferred to keep him focused and away from anything that could pull his attention away from preparation. He added that now Khabib is retired, a visit could happen one day, and it is something he would welcome. Despite retiring early by modern standards, Khabib is still widely regarded as the greatest lightweight in UFC history and one of the sport's all-time legends. Interestingly, fighting was not always his dream. Growing up, Khabib wanted to be a football player and followed the sport passionately. He later joked that he accidentally became a fighter due to his upbringing and his father being a coach, even though football always held a special place in his heart. That strict discipline, careful planning, and avoidance of distractions played a huge role in shaping the flawless career fans still talk about today. And before we continue, make sure to leave a like on the video and subscribe to help support the channel. Moving on to another news, Paddy Pimblett has explained why he was forced to tap out during a BJJ tournament just weeks before UFC 324. The lightweight contender saw his long winning streak snapped at the Next Gen MMA King of the Mat tournament over the Christmas period, and the moment quickly went viral across social media. Pimblett has been deep in training camp as he prepares to face Justin Gaethje for the interim title at UFC 324 in Las Vegas later this month. Despite the intense preparation, he accepted a challenge at his home gym in Liverpool, taking part in the annual grappling event. Paddy had dominated the tournament in previous years, but this time, things played out differently. During the competition, Pimblett was forced to tap out to a calf slicer applied by a gym teammate named Aaron Jordan. With the UFC on a brief break, the clip spread rapidly, giving fans a rare look at one of the division's biggest stars in a pure grappling setting. Paddy later explained that he had not planned on competing seriously that day, having already completed a brutal double training session that included 5 rounds of sparring. At the time, Pimblett was right in the middle of camp for his first ever 5-round UFC fight, scheduled for January 24th. In a video he later uploaded, Paddy broke down exactly what happened and even shared unseen footage from the submission. After the match, he could be heard speaking with Jordan, admitting the situation had been rough after hours of exhausting grappling. Pimblett joked that his opponent had a long rest while he had to battle through another tough round beforehand, leaving him completely drained. He then revealed that Jordan used a movement that is not permitted under the tournament rules to transition into position. According to Paddy, he initially believed Jordan was setting up a heel hook, which is illegal in the competition, so he stayed calm. That calm quickly disappeared when the attack turned into a tight calf slicer. Realizing he was caught, Pimblett had no choice but to tap. Despite the loss, Paddy showed respect to his teammate. He pointed out that he had beaten Jordan in the final before and eliminated him in past tournaments, saying this was simply payback. Pimblett made it clear the result means nothing heading into UFC 324, where his full focus remains on Justin Gaethje and making history under the bright lights in Las Vegas. Moving on to another news, Francis Ngannou's head coach has shared his thoughts on the ongoing tension between his fighter and UFC CEO Dana White, and he hopes the two can eventually put the past behind them. The relationship between Ngannou and White has continued to deteriorate since Ngannou left the UFC in 2023, vacated the heavyweight title, and signed with the PFL. Recently, White reignited the conversation by recalling an incident from years ago that nearly turned physical. Extreme Couture coach Eric Nickal was asked to react to the continued back and forth, and he made it clear he views both men through his own personal experiences. Nickal explained that his relationship with Francis is built on how Ngannou treats him and his family, and that is how he judges his character. At the same time, he said Dana has always been respectful and good to him personally. According to Nickal, he would much rather see the two reconcile than continue carrying old resentment. He feels the issues between them stem from something that happened 7 or 8 years ago and does not understand the need to keep revisiting it. From his perspective, it would be healthier for everyone involved to simply move forward and stop dragging up old problems. Nickal also shared his belief that deep down, Dana likely still likes Francis and possibly misses having him on the UFC roster, especially given the current state of the heavyweight division. He hopes that one day the two can sit down face to face, clear the air, and let go of the negative energy, even if Francis never fights in the UFC again. As for what comes next, Ngannou does not appear close to a UFC return. He remains under contract with the PFL, and promotional executive John Martin has hinted that something special is being planned. Nickal revealed he recently spoke with Ngannou over a video call and was impressed by what he saw. He said Francis is training consistently, moving between Dubai, Cameroon, and Las Vegas, and is in excellent shape. According to Nickal, Ngannou is the lightest he has ever been. His knee feels good, and he is doing regular road work. Francis also told him he wants to fully return to MMA and is working on several options behind the scenes. Nickal believes a return in 2026 is realistic and said the sky is the limit. Ngannou has fought once in the PFL, demolishing Renan Pereira in October 2024, and a future matchup with heavyweight champion Vadim Nemkov is possible. While Nickal would personally love to see Francis back in the UFC for the level of competition, he made it clear that whatever path Ngannou chooses, the team will be ready. Moving on to another news. The hype around Kayla Harrison versus Amanda Nunes at UFC 324 continues to grow, and now one of Harrison's coaches has added his voice to the conversation. UFC CEO Dana White recently described the matchup as the greatest women's fight of all time, and that bold statement has been strongly backed by people close to the champion. Kayla Harrison is set to defend her women's bantamweight title against the returning Amanda Nunes in the co-main event of UFC 324. The fight takes place on January 24th at T-Mobile Arena in Las Vegas and will mark the UFC's first event of the Paramount era. With two of the most accomplished women in MMA history sharing the cage, expectations could not be higher. Steve Mach-O, the wrestling coach at American Top Team where Harrison trains, was asked about Dana White's comments and made it clear he fully agrees. According to Mach-O, the magnitude of this fight is undeniable, and the stakes alone elevate it into historic territory. He described the bout as a massive moment for women's MMA and echoed the belief that it deserves to be viewed as something special. While preparing Harrison for the biggest fight of her career, Mach-O is also staying active himself. He is scheduled to compete in a heavyweight freestyle wrestling match this Saturday against Egypt's Mostafa Elders at RAF 5, which takes place at Amarant Bank Arena in Sunrise, Florida. Despite his own competition, his focus remains firmly on Harrison's title defense. Mach-O also knows Amanda Nunes well, having worked with her during her time at American Top Team. Nunes returns to competition for the first time since retiring as the 135-pound champion after her dominant decision win over Irene Aldana at UFC 289 in June 2023. Her comeback alone adds another layer of intrigue to the matchup. When speaking about Harrison, Mach-O had nothing but praise. He described her as one of the most motivated and detail-oriented athletes he has ever coached, regardless of gender. According to him, her approach to daily preparation, discipline, and professionalism stands out in a way that is rare, even at the highest level. He emphasized that Harrison is extremely driven, a pleasure to coach, and fully locked in on the task ahead. With that mindset and the magnitude of the opponent, the stage is set for a fight that could redefine what the sport considers its greatest women's matchup. Moving on to another news. Fresh off a dominant technical fall win over former UFC middleweight champion Luke Rockhold last night, Colby Covington is already dropping major hints about what comes next in his combat sports future. The former interim welterweight champion, who has not competed inside the UFC since his doctor stoppage loss to Buckley back in December 2024, says he felt incredible competing closer to 185 pounds and is now seriously teasing a permanent move up to middleweight. Speaking at the post-fight press conference, Covington leaned heavily on what he called his unlimited endurance, claiming it would give him a massive advantage against the bigger bodies at 185. According to Colby, fighting at middleweight would allow him to feel stronger, more explosive, and far less drained compared to the brutal weight cuts at welterweight. He even suggested that fans could see his UFC return at the historic UFC White House card on the South Lawn in June, marking his first official appearance as a middleweight. This potential move comes right after a heated back and forth with Bo Nickal during Friday's press conference. Covington and Rockhold both unloaded on the undefeated prospect, questioning his MMA resume and calling his hype into doubt following his loss to RDR. They dismissed the narrative around Bo as an unstoppable force, arguing that his experience has not caught up with the promotion surrounding his name. Bo Nickal quickly responded on social media, firing back at Covington and calling for a UFC fight at the White House event at middleweight. Bo claimed they weigh roughly the same and said the stage would be perfect to settle the tension once and for all. Colby, however, showed no signs of backing down and continued to attack Bo's credibility and toughness. Covington went even further, accusing Bo of quitting in his last fight and saying he has no interest in competing against fighters he believes are unreliable. He emphasized his loyalty to real American freestyle, calling it the future of wrestling, and stressing that he only wants dependable competitors who show up and perform. According to Colby, Bo does not fit that description. Colby also issued a brief apology to RDR, admitting he previously mischaracterized him and acknowledging that a grappler was the one who forced Bo to quit. He doubled down on his stance, saying Bo should focus on fixing his own performances before mentioning his name again. Despite the long layoff, Covington remains confident he is still a proven draw. The idea of a middleweight run opens the door to new grudge matches, fresh challenges, and high-profile moments, especially if the UFC White House event becomes a reality. Colby made it clear that wherever he competes next, he believes his cardio, pressure, and experience will carry him forward at 185. Moving on to another news. Khamzat has set his sights on another UFC champion and is now calling for one of the biggest fights possible. The middleweight king has not competed since capturing the 185-pound title from Du Plessis at UFC 319 in August, but his focus is no longer on the crowded list of contenders in his own division. The middleweight picture continues to move forward, with Sean Strickland and Anthony Hernandez scheduled to clash in a title eliminator at UFC Houston on February 21st. Nassourdine Imavov is also waiting patiently for his opportunity. Despite all of that, Khamzat appears completely uninterested in defending against the usual challengers right now. Instead, the undefeated champion is targeting someone roughly 20 pounds heavier. On Monday morning, Khamzat issued a direct and aggressive call-out to the UFC light heavyweight champion, Alex Pereira. Making his intentions crystal clear, he named both a date and a location for the potential super fight. Khamzat said he wants to face Pereira at the UFC White House event, which is expected to take place on June 14th. Taking to social media, the middleweight champion did not hold back with his prediction for how a champion versus champion showdown would end. "Let's go White House," Khamzat wrote. He followed that up with a ruthless message aimed straight at Pereira, promising a fast finish and warning him not to hesitate if the fight is offered. He also called on Brazilian fans to pressure their champion into accepting the matchup, suggesting fear would be the only reason to turn it down. Meanwhile, Pereira's long-discussed showdown with John Jones appears to be off the table. Jones recently revealed that despite mutual interest, Dana White is not a fan of the matchup and is unlikely to approve it. According to Jones, the final decision rests entirely with the UFC boss. With that door seemingly closed, the idea of Pereira facing Khamzat suddenly feels far more realistic. It is the kind of high-risk, high-reward super fight that would capture massive attention. Whether it becomes reality now depends on one thing, and that is whether Dana White decides to greenlight one of the most dangerous matchups the UFC could possibly make. Moving on to another news, a surging UFC middleweight contender has shared his belief that Khamzat would thrive if he made the jump to light heavyweight. Khamzat, the newly crowned UFC middleweight champion, captured the 185-pound title at UFC 319 with a dominant performance over Duplessis, firmly establishing himself as one of the most dangerous fighters in the sport. At the moment, Khamzat is on the sidelines dealing with a minor foot injury that will require surgery. The expectation is that he will return to action after Ramadan 2026 to make the first defense of his middleweight belt. Once that task is complete, Khamzat has made it clear that he wants to move up in weight and chase a second UFC title. He has also shown interest in competing on the highly anticipated White House card, adding even more intrigue to his future plans. Recently, RDR shared his thoughts on how Khamzat would perform at 205 pounds. RDR, who has also hinted at a possible move up to light heavyweight himself, believes the division is tailor-made for Khamzat's skill set. According to RDR, the lack of elite wrestlers at light heavyweight would allow Khamzat to impose his will and control fights with his grappling. RDR explained that Khamzat's wrestling pedigree would give him a major edge against most of the top contenders at 205. In his view, Khamzat could neutralize the striking threats in the division by dictating where the fight takes place and overwhelming opponents with pressure and control. That opinion is not unique. Jon Jones recently echoed similar thoughts when asked about Khamzat's potential at light heavyweight. Jones said he believes Khamzat is capable of winning at virtually any weight class. He described him as one of the toughest fighters on the planet and suggested that Khamzat is big enough to compete with heavyweights while still being skilled enough to dominate smaller divisions. Jones added that he would love to see Khamzat at light heavyweight, specifically mentioning matchups against fighters like Alex Pereira and Magomed Ankalaev. With praise coming from both RDR and Jones, the idea of Khamzat eventually ruling another division feels less like speculation and more like a real possibility waiting to unfold.